This is a video on how to remove the LineDrive board and replace it properly. The first thing we have to do is to remove the cover of the 950 unit itself. This is a 951. We want to go ahead and take off the 3 screws on this side . And then the end cap just slips out the end. This right along here is a filler strip, and if we want to, this being loose at the end here now, to avoid having that catch on anything, we can take this filler strip off just to make sure it doesn't get damaged. Coming around to the other side, we take off all 4 screws on this side. And again, we just slip this out the end. Now, with that being done, the whole cover slides back. And then you just lift up on this side, and on this side there's a hook underneath this side, so you just kind of slide it that way and the cover comes right off. Now that we have the cover off, the LineDrive board is located underneath the lower board in this location over here. The board on top of here is the DC board. And so the DC board has to be removed first. The best way is to turn the unit so that the DC board is facing you. And then there's 4 screws to remove. Once those 4 screws are removed, you can take the DC board and just lift it up. There's only one plug that's going to come undone when I do this, and that's this plug right here. And take the whole thing and just flip it over. That gives you complete access to the LineDrive board without having to take off all the rest of these connectors. You disconnect all the plug connectors to the LineDrive board. There's 3 plugs over in this corner. And then there's another plug back here. You have to be very careful with this plug because it can get damaged. And then this 2-pin connector right here that goes underneath the fan. Now all your plugs are disconnected and the board is mechanically connected still, but we'll go ahead and take that apart. You just take off all of the mounting brackets, being very careful. And the shield comes off, exposing the rest of it. These are all 1/4 inch, and so a 1/4 inch nut driver is used to take all of these out. And these are 1/4 inch nuts with a lock washer. I'll just take the nuts off for now. And then a couple of more Phillips screws here. Now there's still 2 lock washers in here, but I'm just going to lift the board up and take those washers out with it and dump them out over here. reinstall the LineDrive board, the first thing you want to do is to put some heatsink paste onto the bar that you see right here. This acts as a heatsink for the transistors that are on here. So you put a bead of heatsink paste on there, and then take the board and just drop it down into place. And you want to thread it over the screws that stick up these little spikes. And then just center it in place with a couple of screws. I always try to put a screw in either end the long way to kind of line things up. These two spikes get a lock washer. And then the 1/4-inch nuts go on top of that. Now these need to be tightened down pretty good, because they help to make contact to the heatsink bar. And then there's one more piece that goes on here, and that's one of these little extensions, these little standoffs, goes on the center one. Then you have two more standoffs that go over on this location. And you gotta be careful not to tighten those too tight, otherwise you're gonna break them. These just get snug. And you take your copper strip. Now this is very important, that the copper strip has 1 centimeter of clearance from this heatsink. This heatsink is not ground, and if this copper plate touches this heatsink, it'll blow the board up. Okay, now on this particular pin, you get the long standoff, because that later supports the board. Regular screw over here, and then a washer, and then the nut. Now that helps the copper plate from getting damaged, to have that washer on there. Okay, and then to finish putting the other standoffs, there's another double long one that goes in this corner. And then another one over here. And the final screw goes up in this corner. Now we're going to put the plugs together, and the one that goes down the side is the first one. It just fits right here. And then this is the front switch, goes on the 4-pin. And then the other one going to this little power supply is on this one. Now there's little hooks on these to give you the proper polarity and direction. On the back here, you want to put this red and black wire underneath the fan, and then you plug it in on the first outlet here on the board. Now what we do is we take this little connector here and put the wire underneath it to keep it down. It's important that that wire stay low. Now that that has all been put together, the LineDrive board is in place. What you do then is you take the DC board, tip it back over, and you want to plug this plug in here first, and then drop the board down into place. 4 screws hold it in place. That's really pretty easy. And then you're finished. But you do want to double check your connectors that This is the supply for the discharge relays. Make sure that's still plugged in properly. This is your DC coming over to the high voltage board. Make sure that's still plugged in. And this is your discharge line coming over to the high voltage board. Make sure that those plugs are still intact. Once that's all put back together, everything should be fine.